attract some, potential people who'd like to work with us. So that's the biggest reason for doing the show, and kind of learn a little bit on the way as far as, some kind of behind the scenes aspects of doing a show, or, doing movies or whatever. Again, also, to kind of put a polish on maybe our comedic timing as well. So, just to hang out and have fun. So we hopefully, you'll come along for the ride and enjoy what you're watching.
Right. And again, like I said, any suggestions, questions, concerns, whatever. If you hate us, just say you watched the show at least. It's not gonna bother me, not one bit. Just so I can know you watched. So yeah, stay tuned, and we're gonna go ahead and get you set up here with the appetizer, the first one of our season. And along the way, you might recognize some of our special guest stars. So we hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.
So today we're going to be talking about celebrity gossip, and if you've been watching the news at all in the last 2.5, 3 weeks, of course the biggest story in the world right now really is, the passing of Michael Jackson. So
Right.
being both huge, fan of 80s culture and being born in the 80s, of course it's going to be our major story too. We have a lot to talk about, so we're going to get right into it.
Yep. Well, I was actually at home, when it started coming over the air that, Michael was rushed to the hospital and everything, and I was like, okay, I didn't really think so much of it at first, because it's like, the news, they a lot of times sensationalize things, and, then maybe about an hour and a half after that came up, they said he was dead, and I was like, like, take away the past, I guess, 10, 15 years or so, like, his career, unparalleled. So that was a big deal to me, because, as far as my childhood goes, that was, there was the Michael Jackson song playing, during a lot of my childhood, so.
Definitely,
yeah.
as Kanye West would like to say, is the soundtrack of our lives, for the better part of my life anyway.
For 80s babies.
Yeah, 80s. I mean, even to early 90s, even into 2001. I mean, I think.
And then there, people like older parents' generation, they had the Jackson 5 and stuff. So
Exactly.
I guess that's a lot of people, that were, I think, affected by it.
So we're gonna briefly talk about, basically just the different aspects and parts of Michael's life. I guess starting with his childhood and just kind of going from there. So. Like you mentioned, he was in the Jackson's 5, and of course we all heard stories that, his father was, kind of a little on the abusive side, a little bit, taskmaster, and so that kind of shaped Michael as a person, because if you listen to his music, a lot of it is about childhood, innocence,
And innocence lost and things like that. And then, he got into, his teenage years, and that was some of the later Jackson 5 records, and then that moved into Off the Wall. He was in I think early 20s when he did
I
that.
think he was 20 when he did
Yeah, it
Off
was
the
in
Wall.
1979. And then of course everybody knows the Thriller album. That came out the year I was born, 1982. So that's been around long as I have. And when they had the 25th anniversary of it, I guess the year before last, I was like, oh, that's kind of neat.
And of course, his videos, the Thriller video, which
Right.
as you know, is just groundbreaking on pretty much every aspect. I mean, it was from the just music videos standpoint, period. It's nothing like that had ever been done before, or in my personal opinion, since then. I don't think anything's done anything. There's been a lot of imitators, but nothing that's ever actually come close to touching what he accomplished in that video.
Right, and then, speaking of Thriller, I guess many of us 80s babies can attest to, watching it like this, peeking around things. I was like, oh, this is so cool, but I was so terrified of it.
Yeah, listening to the music. But
So, I thought it was sad, a lot of people were like, oh, Michael Jackson turned into a freak, blah-de-blah-de-blah, and I'm like, well, I don't know,
Yeah, it's we're not there. We're not in his inner circle.
Right, no one really knows what happened, and so I feel as musically speaking, and entertainment, and nothing else. I think he deserves a lot of respect, because if it wasn't for him, there would be no, a lot of people,
Yeah,
that
definitely.
people are just so crazy over these days, like they wouldn't be here, and so I think respect where respect is due.
Of course, we kind of touched on it a little bit, like in the past 10 or 15 years, how he came into like a lot of personal problems with allegations, and also more recently, I guess his finances. How much of that do you think is true, or again, has it been sensationalized, or?
Well, I mean, okay, as far as the allegations, everybody knows what I'm talking about. Like, I feel like, okay, the first time it was like, okay, and it came up whatever, and people were like, oh, he paid him off because he was guilty, and I'm like, well, okay, that's one way to look at it. Or my other thing was, I'm like, okay, if that really happened, what kind of parent would be? Well, and I know it was a lot of money, and people are different, and this and that and the other. But what kind of parent would sit down and be like, okay, well, I don't care if he goes to jail, or I mean, if it really truly happened that way, like, wouldn't I would think, I don't have any children, but I would be like, no, this man needs to go to jail, be away from other children,
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean, and if things like that were happening, I know he's got a lot of money, and in this country, especially these days, like money and celebrity gives you a lot of privilege, but the services, the child protective services in California, they were after Britney Spears after pictures of her, showed up with her kid driving on her lap. So if something was really there, I feel like he would not been able to have custody of his kids all this time too.
Exactly.
So and then then again, like I mean, I can't definitely say, but that's the way I feel about it. And so what are your thoughts on it?
Well, as far as his like finances goes, his money problems, like I don't think it was really stemming from the allegations. It was more from what everyone's kind of said, is that he has like a really elaborate lifestyle, which I think everyone can attest to.
Right.
And so I don't know. I think maybe him owing a lot of money is a little off base. I don't know. Again, I don't really know, but because it seems like despite everything, he's still like buying and still spending money, and
Right.
if you look at his kind of assets, there's a lot of money producing assets there.
Right, like he owns the Beatles catalog, for crying out loud. Like that's like all of his assets were not like a house, or they weren't. So yeah, and since his death though, like his albums have been like flying off shelves and everything. So
And I mean, playing on the radio, and every time you
Right.
play a song on the radio, that's money towards
Right,
royalties and
right.
stuff like that.
Definitely, and then the things he owns, still properties and things that he owns. So well, and then too, like I believe I heard it on some show that he was still worth an estimated like $230 million or something like that. So his children will be fine.
So I guess let's talk about the memorial. It was on pretty much like every channel the day that it came on, and across the world.
Oh, this was Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Again, I was at home that day. I caught it, and I thought it was, really respectful, really tasteful. Like, I was kind of alarmed because, you think a funeral memorial at the Staples Center, and you're like, okay, But, it was really tasteful and respectful. Like, and I think, a lot of credit should go to the fans, too, because, they all held it together and, appropriate applause and stuff. I was a little creeped out by the fact that they had his casket there, though. I think it was empty, though. I personally don't really think he was in there, but,
I thought as well as really well done, really tastefully done. As far as being the king of pop, and then kind of being around the people who you've influenced, and who've, I think, in return also influenced him a little bit too. You had people like Stevie Wonder and
Smokey Robinson
there, and so
Yeah.
it was really, and it's all musicians and artists, so they showed the love in the best way they could, which was by performing.
Right.
And so I thought that was really tastefully done. And
I did think it was really sad during Usher's performance when he kind of broke down a little bit, and I'm generally not an Usher fan, but I was like, oh, tear.
well, it was very touching. I think Mariah, she was a little bit shaky, and then of course
we'll say that's why she sounded that way.